Welcome to Verbal Mirrors Reflecting Understanding podcast, where the power of words becomes a bridge between worlds. In this podcast, we embark on a dynamic exploration of the human experience, weaving a tapestry of diverse voices, stories, and perspectives. I am your host, Lavinia Richards. Join us on a journey that transcends boundaries, fostering connection, empathy, and a deeper understanding of the rich mosaic that defines us all. Get ready to reflect, resonate, and embark on a transformative odyssey through the art of conversation. What's up, beautiful people? Welcome to Verbal Mirrors Reflecting Understanding podcast. Listen, this is the space where I take you into the real, the raw, and the spiritual. I'm your host, Lavinia, your mirror, your reminder, and sometimes your wake-up call. Here, we dive into the conversations that honestly most people run from, like healing, shadow work, accountability, empowerment, spirituality, relationships, trauma, and the truth behind the mask that we wear, right? This is where you come to hear yourself, meet yourself, and evolve yourself. I'm not here to sugarcoat anything. That's not my style, but I am here to help you see what you've been avoiding, reclaim what you've been suppressing, and rise into who you were designed to be. So, what I want you to do right now, y'all, chill out, take a deep breath, right? Settle in, and let's get into it because the mirror is definitely speaking. We need to just be available to hear. All right. So family, let's talk about rebirth. And I'm not talking about some cute little soft new year, new me slogan, right? That we all used to. It's about to be the first of the year. No, I mean the kind of rebirth where your old life literally starts suffocating you. When you look around and realize, I don't belong here anymore. When the version of you that everybody knew, everybody depended on, and everybody expected, in air quotes, right, starts feeling like a costume you don't want to wear anymore. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. See, rebirth happens when your spirit outgrows your circumstances. It happens when something inside you whispers, baby, it's time. And even though it's scary, even though you don't have a map of where you're going and all of that, even though people might not understand it, you know you can't stay who you used to be. Rebirth is messy, it's confusing, it's emotional, right? But it's one of the most powerful things that you can do and give yourself. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is let a version of you die so the real you can finally breathe. Real talk. All right. So I want to really talk about seriously, what it looks like and what rebirth is, right? And that honestly looks like shedding old layers. Now, what do I mean by old layers? Well, the old places you used to go, right? The old clubs you used to go to. You know, if you were someone who used to get high, right? Going back to those places with the people who used to do those things, right? If you're an alcoholic or an ex-alcoholic, you know what I'm saying? You don't go back into the same bars and hang with the same crowd, right? Letting go of those old layers, shedding the skin of growing up, you know, carrying the burdens and the weights of other people, i.e., your parents, your grandparents, whoever that is, carrying those things that have shaped you and molded you, shedding those layers, and honestly, like old, outdated thinking, you know, outdated beliefs, shedding the layers of thinking that you're not worthy, shedding the layers of believing that you don't matter, shedding those layers. You get what I'm saying? I think that it's important to recognize where you are. And then not only that, outgrowing people and environments. I kind of spoke about it, about going to different places, but see, you can't You can't go back or stay in the place where you're hurt and also heal. You know what I'm saying? You have to separate yourself. And that's what shedding the old skin looks like. Now, for me, shedding the old skin looked like letting go of codependency. And so I had the codependency. And so I would let people use me because I wanted them to be around. I wanted them to stick around. I wanted them to hang around. So I was an overgiver, right? So I had to unlearn that behavior. I had to shed that skin. I had to shed the survivorship skin that I just needed to survive, just survive, 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 fight, fight, fight. I had to shed that old skin. Well, in order to do that, I had to stop hanging around codependent people who thought like me, right? Who were fearful of life, who were fearful of growth. I had to break away from people who had been through the same abuses as me, right? Because we were kind of in the same old group, the same old basket, if you will. I had to break away from poor mentality, right? Because what comes along with that is, that old skin is, you can't see the forest from the trees. You can't honestly see yourself moving forward because you've been so used to surviving and only having enough, that you don't believe it's for you, right? Coming from abuse, you don't believe that there's a happy relationship for you. So you got to shed that old skin of the way you used to act, the way you used to think, the people you used to hang with, the places you used to go, right? And outgrowing those people who that looks like, and it's not intentional, but outgrowing those people and those places looks like, hey, Lavinia, you know what I'm saying? Do you want to come over and we're going to watch Waiting to Exhale, girl, because Larissa, I'm making up a name, she broke up with her husband, and girl, we just want to band together and just cry. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that, right? The old me would have wanted to, because I understand. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to empathize or sympathize with Larissa, because that's my girl, right? But there comes a time that we got to heal, and I don't know if that was the best analogy, but I'm just saying, or best example, but I'm just saying there has to come a point where you don't keep taking yourself back to the same place that you were wounded. You don't keep reliving the same dream, like reliving the same nightmare, shall I say, over and over again. You have to find a space and a place where you are deciding that you no longer want to live in that space, that you're willing to let the old die, that you're willing to keep moving forward, that you're no longer willing to live in the same circumstances and behaviors and ideologies that you used to. Right. And so that's what shedding the layers looks like. It looks like saying no. Right? Because the old me would have just really been ready to just run for people, regardless of whether they had been there for me, regardless of whether they had my back or not, just wanting to be seen and acknowledged, and that codependency, knowing I didn't feel good doing it. Right. But I needed that. There was something about me, the codependency issues that I had, right? Excuse me, I'm sipping my tea, that caused me to stay in places and situations too long, right? And that was a version of me that I didn't even know needed to die, because you are surviving, and you are seeking love and validation, even when you don't know it. You tend to do things that are uncompromising, for your morals, for your beliefs, and it can hinder you, right? And so rebirth looks like shedding the layers. It looks like outgrowing people and environments. Remember, I was saying you don't go, like, if you know that you are an absolute alcoholic, right? Or were a recovering alcoholic, right? You're just not going to go with Leroy and them on the corner and keep drinking. You're just not going to go meet up with them. You're not going to do that because it's not conducive for your well-being. It's not conducive for your health. It's not conducive for your survival, right? So, and then rebirth also looks like you being done settling. Now I can stay here and I'm probably going to stay here for a minute because what do I mean by that? Done settling. Well, I talked about me being codependent, needing people in my life, that love, that staying in, especially intimate relationships, but even like with regular relationships, like with my children. Now, they didn't run me at all. You can ask them, honey. I ain't having no child run me. However, especially having girls, when they were coming up, I didn't want tension. Not because I couldn't spaz, not because I wouldn't lose my shit, because they know mama didn't play, but more so because of the energy. I didn't want it to be too tense in the house. I didn't want anybody mad at me. You know, I wanted to keep the peace because I had come from enough chaos within my home. And so I was compromising certain things and maybe letting certain things pass, and not just necessarily with my children, but even like with my then significant other or then spouse, because I just wanted to keep the peace. So I would settle. I would settle in places and areas that I knew I didn't want to, but as long as it kept the quiet, as long as it didn't cause chaos, because I didn't want nobody arguing. I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want the repercussions of what it would bring. You know what I'm saying? Even with me, like with my children, knowing that I can go from 0 to 1,000,000 within the blink of an eye, like, let me just think about it. So I would compromise some things where I know maybe they needed that ass beat, you know, but because I would know where I could go, I would have to rethink it, or just again want to keep that peace and that level of calm, if you will, within my household, right? So I would settle, you know. Now that's one aspect, but then where I would really settle would be in the relationships, right? Um, Knowing that, you know, I would be tired. I would work doing hair. And at the time, you know, being married, I would do hair sometimes to 10, 11 o'clock. And to have someone come knowing that you're working, you're grinding out, and they there, right? They doing something, whatever they want to do, right? And can cook, you know, but because I signed up to be the wife, right? I'm going to make sure that my spouse has dinner. So he would be chilling, talking about what we eating. And I'm like, I'm not going to get done with Elizabeth, you know, until maybe 11:30 at night, you know. And I would be cooking knowing that I would be so tired, y'all, right? Settling instead of saying, tonight you figure that shit out, right? Settling because I didn't want the repercussions of, I didn't want my then spouse to be upset with me. I didn't want the argument. I didn't want the tension, right? Let's talk about it. Even having sex, right? It was more of a chore. I settled because I wanted to keep the peace, and I wanted to keep the old skin of a good wife. And a good wife makes sure, in my eyes back then, definitely. And I'm not saying y'all make sure your husband not good now, but there should be reciprocity now. I learned. But, you know, even in that, I knew that even after doing all of those things, he would still want to be intimate and have sex, right? So these are things that I was settling for because in my mind, I don't want to be touched. Leave me alone. I want to go to bed. I don't feel like this shit, right? So settling. And I was sacrificing myself because it turned into a resentment, right? Because now I want to play dead in the bed, right? Because don't touch me. I don't want to, I'm so tired. And I didn't want to have to explain why I didn't want to do it. And settling, right? Because I would rather make sure everybody was at their peaceful state, but everybody except me, right? So that was yet another layer of skin that needed to be shedded because I was settling in the relationship. I was settling with not being, how do I want to say it, emotionally fed. I'm a lover. Love. Now this is not to say that because I've been married twice, this is not to say that my spouses didn't have some level of emotional intelligence. Okay. But I know that I am done with the over masculine man, meaning I want you to be every bit of the man. I want you to take charge. I want you to be a leader. I want you to be able to lead us and direct us as a unit. I do. I like that. I love a take charge man. What I mean about over masculine is a man that can't dive into his feminine energy. You're just too masculine. You don't know how to break down and let in, and so knowing how loving I am, I stayed in a relationship. Well, relationships like that were toxic for me, right? Because it was honestly just breaking me down. It was really killing me. I was dying inside and didn't even know it because I was trying to appease other people and settle for things that I know I didn't want. I need a man that knows how to love me back. I need a man that knows how to open up his heart. Yes, be masculine, do whatever you got to do out there in the streets for the world. But when it's me and you behind closed doors, let me see some of that tender side. Let me be able to lay in your arms and rest in you and cuddle with you. Let me be able to Netflix and chill with you, right? Let me be able to have a hard day and no, not come and dump on you, but know that I can come and rest in you. Right. And so I didn't have that. I couldn't cry. Oh, don't start that crying, this, and the other. And then when I would be too tough, oh, you want to be the man. Make up your mind. Right. And I didn't understand that I was settling because I needed someone who understood the totality of me. Right. So I didn't know that was anything that I needed to kill, if you will, to let die. Right. I didn't know I needed a rebirth in that area because I had been so used to appeasing other people. I had been so used to making sure everybody else was good but me. I had been so used to settling. Right. I had been so used to doing that, so used to giving all of myself, giving to everybody else, that I didn't understand that I needed to let that go. And that was the shedding of another layer. We're going to dive into these layers because I didn't understand these layers, y'all. I'm going to sip my coffee real quick. Lies, that was my tea. I apologize. My mullein tea. All right. So listen, y'all. So those were layers that I didn't know that I needed to shed. But I did know, remember when I said earlier that you can't stay there anymore? That's what happened to me. I started looking at my life and I started realizing that the things that I was choosing for my life, the version of me that I had become so complacent with and so comfortable with, right? That version of me was killing me slowly. And I mean it from a literal sense. But I didn't know it. I kept going back for the same hurt, the same settling, the same demise, the same pain, the same brutality, because it was comfortable. It was what I knew. It was my life, pretty much from childhood on up, from what I can remember of my childhood. And that's not to say that there weren't glimpses of happy moments, but I can honestly tell you that more toxicity, pain, and hurt overshadowed those good moments. Okay. And so that was a layer. Let's understand, as you grow, if you don't find any kind of healing, which most of us didn't because nobody was getting counseling back in those days, it was shunned upon, especially in the African American community, because we just don't do that. Right. But so we got this mental stuff. We're not getting that kind of help. Right. We're staying in the environments because where else do I go? I couldn't go anywhere else. I lived with my mama. You know what I'm saying? I lived with my mom and daddy at one point, and then my mom. So I'm saying, like, you don't know what you don't know. So you don't know these things need to be healed. So these things were killing me slowly because these things were molding me. right? The abuses that I witnessed, right? The abuses that I experienced, the life altering situations, the traumatic situations that I was exposed to, right? Shaped me. All of those are layers, layers, layers. Now, wait for it. There was no counseling until I got older, right? Now, what happens is, not only did I have my layers, this is what I want y'all to understand. I carried the layers and the weights of my ancestors, my mom, right? Her hurt, her pains, her whatever it was, because I'm attached to her bloodline. My father, I carried some of his hurts, his pains, his shadows, right? Because you do know that they go through things. Did they go to counseling? I highly doubt it, because we just got in the era where we want to speak. We just got in the era where we're awakening. We just got in the era where we want to deal with the shadow aspect of self, right? So prior to, no, these things were shunned upon. You know how it used to go: what goes on in my house stays in my house. You don't run your mouth. Don't tell people with my business, blah, 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 right? Which so many people were affected. Layers, layers, more layers, right? So we got these layers. We got these layers on. And we don't know that they're molding and shaping us. And so now here we are, full-blown adults with anxiety, depressions, overthinking, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, all of these things. Because think about it, those people weren't getting help. So you got broken people raising broken people, and it's a cycle. So we carrying not only our layers, but some of their layers too. And we settle because we were making agreements that we didn't know we were making. I didn't know I was accepting anxiety and stress, right? It was an agreement that I was making the whole time, but I didn't know it. I didn't know that. I didn't know that I was agreeing to a certain lifestyle, because where you are, like, you didn't agree to the home you're there, right? You didn't agree to where you grew up at. That's where mama and daddy live. So you had to adapt, right? And some of that molded you. And so those are layers too, because some of us are still stuck in the neighborhood. It's grown men and women in their 40s and 50s still hanging out in the neighborhood doing what they did when they were in their 20s and 30s, right? Because it's unfamiliar to move forward. It's familiar to stay in what you know. It's familiar to keep those layers on. And that's what kills us. That's what weighs us down. That weighs us down. That's what has us mentally incompetent. Us going through mental warfare, has us mentally challenged, has us mentally depressed, right? That's why I want you to know how to recognize when it's time for the rebirth and be willing to do it. Be willing to release the old. Be willing to say, baby, it's time to go, right? The other thing about settling, not just in relationships. See, I stayed in the abusive relationships. I was settling. I stayed in certain neighborhoods because I was settling, because I couldn't see more for myself. And I couldn't see more for myself because I was bogged down with the depressions and the weights of everything that I saw. And then I thought that I was a victim of that circumstance. I really thought that I was a victim, right? But that's not the case. But it wasn't until I started shedding the old skin, until I allowed the rebirth to come in, until I started understanding that I was greater than all of those circumstances that I had been going through, that I had been experiencing, and that I was not and am not and will never be a victim. Now, let's talk about rising into the new identity. Because what does that look like? Changing old habits. Changing old habits. That's the first thing I can tell you. It looks like rising into your new identity looks like you not going to the same places without being redundant, not talking to the same people, cutting people off. It looks like meditation. It looks like finding your happy center, your grounding, your peace, whatever that looks like for you. It looks like disassociating yourself from toxicity. It looks like no longer doing the thing that you no longer want to do. It looks like not appeasing the person anymore. It looks like, I said earlier, saying no, right? It looks like understanding that you matter. That's what the rebirth does. The rebirth helps you hit the reset button so that you can understand that you absolutely matter. I didn't know I mattered. Hence the reason I was dealing with all the bullshit, right? I didn't know I mattered, y'all. And you can say what you want, but it's a lot of people out here who don't know they matter because they're going through things, or somebody lied to them and told them that they would never be anything, or somebody touched them inappropriately, or somebody broke their self-esteem, or somebody teased them all through school, or somebody bullied them. And they don't think they matter, because I was one of those people. I was one of those people. And so when you're subjected to those things over and over and over again, right? It is hard because you're around the same stuff. It's hard to change your thought process when you keep trying to heal where you got injured. So the rebirth is necessary. And it looks like you stopping being there for people who don't appreciate you. Yeah, but that's my cousin and we go way back. But your cousin ain't attended shit you have for the past 7 years. Ain't supported nothing you've done in business, in life. Y'all go way back though. But you done broke your neck to make it to every single thing that they've had, only to get frowned upon when you ask, are they gonna come? I know, that's your daughter. That's your daughter, but she don't like you. She don't like you. I know that everybody wants to have their children. And listen, I love all of my seeds. But I say this one thing and I stand on this. We have them and we pray the best for them and we try to instill the best for them. But do you understand that you don't know the spirit and or / the soul, shall I say, inside of that body? You have no idea what's there. You don't know their agreements. You don't know what that soul agreed to. I get it. I get that you want them to be this, that, and the other, and you shape them and this is no, you don't know. It doesn't matter about the title. What are they showing you? What are they giving you? How are they treating you? Right? The days of giving people passes because of title is dead. It's dead. Stop it. Stop telling a child whose father has touched them inappropriately, or their mother or their auntie or their cousin or their brother or their sister, to honor that person because of their title. No. And that's why there's so many secrets and hidden agendas, because that old shit's still going on. What happens in my house will go on in my house. Fuck that. If it ain't right, say something. If something going on that is inappropriate and it's putting you in harm's way, say something if you can. Right? Because it's shaping us, it's molding us, and watch what you're doing around your kids anyway. Right? But anyway, I don't want to get off track because I get fired up about that. Rising into the new identity. Cutting those people off. Yeah, I was talking about the titles. It don't matter. I know you want it to matter, but that's what the rebirth looks like. See, the old self had you going hard for the people who didn't matter. The old you had you doing things and going above and beyond when it was never, ever reciprocated. The old you had you loving on people who wasn't giving you shit in return, right? But the rebirth, right? When you start shedding that skin, you start seeing a little bit clearer, right? You start understanding that there is life after death. Right? You start understanding that you are in control of the way you respond to today's events. You start understanding that your words are very powerful. You start understanding that as a man thinketh and believeth, so is he. Right? So now you start shifting from that lack mentality, that survivorship mentality, that codependency attitude, that fear attitude, that anxiousness, into an independence, into a strength, into a power, into a resonance, into an evolution, into a revolution, right? Into resolve. You find pieces of you that you didn't even know existed. At least I did. And Rising into that new identity, although hard, although tough, it is not easy to cut people off you love. It is not easy to walk away from people, places, and things that you used to call family or home or whatever the situation was, right? It is not easy to start completely over from scratch without, like I said earlier, no blueprint, there's no map. You're suspended in the gray where all the magic is happening that you can't see. And you got to have enough faith to trust this rebirth process, to not go back to your old ways, to not go back to the old outdated ways and beliefs that got you stuck in the first place. And I might piss somebody off, but I got to say it. The only reason you're stuck is because of your mindset. I'm going to pause there for a minute, and I don't want to stay there too long, but the only reason you're stuck is because of your mindset. Listen, as someone who has come from mental abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, all of the things, if I can say that, trust me when I tell you, I mean it, right? My mind was so messed up. I thought I was a victim. I thought that everything that had happened to me, why had God, source, universe failed me? Why did these things happen? X, Y, Z, you know, the why, the this, the this, the this, the this, and blah, blah, blah. And let's be honest, I'm a human and I may ask those questions again, but let me say this. It was mindset that helped me. Changing the mindset. See, the subconscious wants to keep you in a space and a state that you always remember the old so you can never get forward to the new, because the subconscious is comfortable. So it remembers the pain, it remembers the trauma, and it wants to keep you there. Remember, but guess what? When whoever touched me back when at that age, that was not my fault. And I'm not that age anymore. I survived it. I became a beautiful young woman, very intelligent, well-versed, right? Ended up having a beautiful family from it. That man that was whooping my ass, dragging me up railroad tracks, pulling sawed-off shotguns on me, you understand? I survived that, right? I got 2 beautiful daughters from that relationship, right? Raised them to be beautiful young women who gave me plenty of grandchildren, right? And we were able to move forward, right? That last relationship, the verbal abuse, because there was no physical, and the mental anguish, right, that I had to endure. I no longer have to do those things, but it was a mindset. I had to decide that I didn't have to do that. I had to decide that that was no longer conducive for me. I had to decide mentally. There were no guns holding me anywhere except for in that one abusive relationship. There were plenty of guns, and I was very fearful for my life, right? But I got out of it by the grace of God, source, universe. I got out of it, but it was still a choice because I had to decide I was sick of it. I had to decide I was sick of it. It got to a point that I just had to say either me or him, whatever it took. But I knew, remember I said I had to let that version of me die so the real me can breathe. So when you find yourself, when you find that space and place within yourself to be able to heal and let go of the old, let go, do the shedding of the skin, layer by layer, like an onion, peel it off piece by piece. And I said like an onion because you're going to cry with it. You're going to cry. You're going to get angry. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to wipe your eyes. You're going to be like, oh, this burns, right? And it may not be literally, it may be metaphorically. But either way, you have to decide that you're ready to stop living as the old version of you that overgave, that overshowed up, that overloved, that overdid, that self-sabotaged, that destroyed self, right? That doubted yourself, that sabotaged yourself in every aspect, that ran from making it, that ran from success, that rejected love, right? All of those things because you thought about all these old things that you held on to back when, you know, your great granddaddy or great daddy or granddaddy or whatever told you you wasn't going to be nothing. Now you believe it. And now here you are at 60 or 50 or 40 or 30 or whatever that number is, still holding on to some shit that has no weight bearing, because at any moment you decide mentally that you want to grow and evolve, that you no longer want to be where you are, that it's time for the old self to die so that you can walk into your rebirth, that's where all the magic happens. Listen, I want you guys, I always have a call to action. And that's the journaling prompt. And I really hope you guys are doing this. And for those of you who, just hop on, I try to give a call to action because this is about healing. And I get on, this is Solo Sessions from the Soul, raw and uncut, right? Because these are my experiences. And I get on here and I always tell you, whether I help one person or 100 people, my work is done, right? But I need to share because I want you to be the best version of yourself. And it's not an easy feat. And I start with my journey so you can walk with me through it and see my successes, see my growth, see my development, so you know it's possible, right? But in your journal, emotional alchemy, I want you I'm sorry, not emotional alchemy. I'm talking about something else. That's another show. Listen, journaling prompt. I want you to put, what part of me has expired and what am I becoming? What part of me has expired and what am I becoming? The part of me that has expired is the old, docile, overgiving, self-sabotaging, lack of independence, lack of strength, lack-mindedness. Those things are dead. Those things are dead. Those things have expired in me. Overgiving has expired in me. Overloving to people who can't receive what I have, expired. Lack of reciprocity, expired, right? Lack of true, genuine, unconditional love, expired. Lack of putting me on the back burner, putting myself on the back. We're not doing that no more, right? Those are some of the things. I can go on and on and on, but I want you to put again, what part of me has expired and what am I becoming? I'm becoming a new me, a more powerful me, a more enlightened me, a more spiritual me, a more strengthened me, right? And I can go on and on with that, a more beautiful me. And I'm not talking about just on the outside. Yes, I feel like I look damn good, right? At 53, what? But not that. I'm talking about on the inside, where I'm loving me, where it's not a facade anymore, where I'm not putting a mask on anymore, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Pretending, acting like everything okay, hating to go home because there's hell all up in it, hating to go to work because you can't stand nobody there, but you can't tell nobody what's going on at home, XYZ. You understand? Whatever your situation is, I get it. But that's why it's time for you to let that part of you expire. And make sure that you ask yourself what you're becoming. I am becoming the phenomenal woman that God Source Universe designed me to be. And I am unwilling to ever go back, right? And put myself on the back burner and shortchange myself ever again, all to appease or empower somebody else's ego. I am, as you are, worthy, right? And so, listen, I just want to thank you all for listening to Verbal Mirrors Reflecting Understanding. Check it out. If today's episode hit your spirit, if it hit your mind or even your shadow, good. That means you're growing, right? It means you're expanding and you're opening up your mind. So I want you to share this episode, please, with someone who needs it. And make sure you follow so you don't mix the next moment of truth. Remember, healing is not pretty, but it is powerful. And you deserve to walk in your wholeness. Until next time, keep rising, keep reflecting, and keep doing the work. I'll talk to you soon. As we wrap up another episode of Verbal Mirrors Reflecting Understanding, we encourage you to carry the reflection sparked here into your daily interactions. Let the echoes of diverse perspective guide your journey towards greater empathy and connection. Thank you for being a part of our dialogue. Until next time, may your mirrors of understanding continue to reflect a world filled with compassion and unity. You're welcome. I don't even know you, and I don't care, but that's whatever.